First and foremost, thanks for taking the valuable time out of your weekend. You could just as easily be fishing, hunting, dare I say it, shooting. Not for long. Well, only if you let it happen. And your weekend time's valuable. You get 52 of them a year. Thank you very much for coming out this weekend. I trust that people like Professor Zimmerman and Louise and Ryan have been fantastic to listen to. Certainly that last episode, I'm sorry, you've got to put up with me for a few minutes, but that was something else, don't you reckon? So why are we here? We're here today because a bunch of you contacted us and a freelance journalist from Politics Reloaded at Christmas. On the 26th of January, Boxing Day, we had a quick meeting. All our internal staff were on holidays. We had no IT support, no nothing. The Politics Reloaded fellow, Neil, he whipped up a quick website, got graphics going, and we started this really quick. And to those people that were involved, and there's a few of you in the crowd here, thank you for doing so. Otherwise, this event wouldn't be happening. The purpose of the event was to demonstrate to government, presently, government of the future, that we, the responsible people, the responsible firearm owners, are not happy being victims of disgraceful policy and legislation. Yet nothing is being done to expand the assault on criminals. We're here to put pressure on the politicians of the next government. They need to understand that as a bare minimum, the position that the National Party came out with to block these laws is to be the bare minimum. We actually think you could do better. Wouldn't you agree? So how did we as Australian citizens get to where we are today with respect to gun laws? Now, long before the NFA was created, I was shooting as a youngster and we didn't have to have licences at all. Heck, my brother used to go to the gun shop on the way home from school to pick up air rifle pellets. I mean, you could not do that today. Air rifle pellets of all things. So how did we get here? Well, we all know the tragic event that happened in Tasmania, and this NFA was thrust upon us. And many people in the political world and the media seem to think that from that day forward, John Howard introduced something that was spectacular. Not very many people are aware, but I challenge you, if you don't believe me, go to the National Archives and you'll find the original draft of the National Firearm Agreement from 1987, 9 years prior. This was the work of police commissioners out of every state meeting at a federal level under the Labor Hawke-Keating era. Now just think about that for a minute. John Howard gets all the credit, right? Sorry. You go and download that document and compare it to the NFA today, and there's like, if there was such a thing as track changes back then, there wouldn't be very many of them. So we need to understand that this came from, I could call it a conspiracy. It was a conspiracy to deny Australians their firearm rights. And it came from the Labor Party back in the 80s. But they waited for an opportunity. What a sad state of affairs when you wait for a disaster to inflict a bit of legislation that was in the bottom drawer. The other big myth, and it is always repeated in the media, is this decline of firearm deaths thanks to our wonderful gun laws. Now, I've used this in a video conference previously, and only the people down the front will be able to see it easily. But you see there's 4 lines on that bit of paper, and see they're all declining. Right in the middle is 1996. So if you're going to be intellectually honest, and I trust everyone here's got an IQ above probably 100, but certainly you don't need an IQ much above 30 to work out that that constant decline started before 1996. So something else was at play here. Gun laws didn't achieve public safety at all. We did as a community. We did it ourselves through education and being responsible people. We didn't need laws to tell us to be responsible, did we? So while I'm going to hand out these massive accolades to John Howard and his implementation of the Hawke-Keating NFA, he was that good, he made it to go retrospective 20 years prior. Like, seriously, this graph starts 20 odd years prior. That's pretty impressive, isn't it? But the other three lines represent New Zealand, Canada, and the United States. You know the ones the media paint out to be the big bad guys? How on earth did our legislation work 20 years prior in those three countries? I think now is the time that we all refuse to accept that the National Firearm Agreement and most of our gun laws are pointless. About the only one that's worthwhile is lock your guns up when you're not using them. I want to congratulate you all on being in the most elite, most upstanding sector of society. We expect that our police officers are exceptionally law-abiding people, by and large. Statistically, anywhere around the world, wherever there's a licensing system in place, you can do some statistical measurement, and I suggest you go and do your own research here. But this was discovered in Florida 20 years ago, and I've even done it on some states here in Australia. Statistically, all of you commit crime, all of you and the firearm owning, the lawful firearm owning responsible community, commit crimes, and I'm not talking about a mistake on your tax return, I'm talking about assaults and sexual assaults and, domestic violence. We commit crimes at a rate of 1/6 to 1/10 that of the police, and the police are pretty darn good. So what does that say about you? Why are we being the ones punished for criminal misuse? I think it's about time government started to listen to that. Thank you. So what have we got going on in Western Australia? My first comment is, the government doesn't hate guns. They've got lots of them. They hate you. They hate you, and they hate your passion for your sport. There is a sector of government that hates us, yet we are the most responsible sector of society. In fact, if you're a police officer and a firearm owner, that really puts you in the top of the tree, doesn't it? What we've got going on is draconian, non-evidence-based, and Professor Zimmerman made a much, much better job of this than I could ever do. A draconian, non-evidence-based reaction to criminal misuse. And all the while, they're currently spending, tens of millions, probably by the time this is over 100+ million, on penalising the very people you shouldn't be penalising, and they're not spending that money, they're not supporting the police in tackling criminals. Are they spending this money giving them more tools, more intelligence, more cops on the road? No. In fact, the majority of police are our friends. In fact, as Shooters Union, you'd be surprised how many police are members, and that includes you call them, I think, TRG, we call them CERT. They're one of us. And they, in their work, aren't getting all the support they need from government, yet they're quite willing to waste taxpayers' money, our money, on making your life more miserable. That's where we're at. And when legislation gets passed like they're prepared to, the government will not stop short of seizing your private property. I'd call that political regime theft, would you? So here's something new that we haven't published anywhere in the country yet. We do a lot of RTIing around the place. We have some people that are far more talented at freedom of information. I don't know what you call it. Do you call it RTIs or freedom of information over here? And we've discovered something alarming that's rolling off the back of this National Gun Register, which is not going to save anything at all. It's going to create more expense on paperwork that will also be inaccurate. The concern is that there's a push into all the states that, hey, water sports time. If someone can stand on it, you're going to have to put a bit of weight. That's the way. Good work, sir. Thank you. Maybe at the end we'll let them go and then everyone can get a bit of a cool off. The federal government are basically bribing the states with money to update their registers and do all this, but it's sort of got a, well, while you're at it, yeah, can you clamp down on a few more things? We haven't got all the data to prove it yet, but it certainly looks like it. And you know what it's, you know they say if it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck, there's a duck somewhere. So this is coming from the back of the National Gun Registry and a federal push. You're being used as lab rats here in Western Australia right now in the pursuit of deploying a distraction of private firearm ownership in Australia. You're first. And what's this going to do for your kids and your grandkids? I mean, this is going to affect you, but it's going to affect my grandchildren. So how do we stop it? We must keep standing up. Do not roll over. I think Louise talked about, people rolling over. Us conservative, quiet, law-abiding, responsible people, we tend not to make a big fuss. But we need to stand up. I've also got to say, if you're not helping, and this applies to the rest of the shooting community, if you're not helping, you're part of the problem. If you're in the wagon and not pulling the wagon, you're part of the problem. Now is the time to get off the sidelines and into the fight. Like it or not, now is the time to get off the sidelines and into the fight. And I don't mean fistfights. How do we stop this? I'm going to give every one of you a homework assignment. No good going home and saying, I don't have any homework. You've all got a homework assignment. Firstly, and this doesn't take a lot of effort, but in your own words, take some of what you've learned here today from all of the speakers, put it in your own words, write to the police minister. And I know you're going to say he's going to ignore it, of course he is. But even if only 1,000, and there's more than 1,000 people here, even if 1,000 people, even if 100 people wrote to the police minister, it will get noticed. Remember, politicians understand one thing more than anything: numbers. Write to the police commissioner, respectfully. Point out to him that, hey, this is not on. We, as responsible firearm owners, would like all the money and effort put behind you and your team of police to track and arrest criminals. Not me, not you. And lastly, write to all the candidates in your electorate. Tell them exactly the same thing, and this is what you expect of them going forward. Now, what's this going to cost you? It's going to cost you about 10 minutes. It's going to cost you 10 minutes once a month, because you might do this on a regular basis going forward. When I said get off the sidelines and into the fight, this doesn't end on March, this goes forever. Become activists. Not extremists, just activists. The next thing you need to do is talk to all your family, friends and work colleagues. They may not be into shooting sports at all. They may not be farmers. They might have no interest whatsoever in firearms. But they'll know that you're a responsible, sensible person and that you should not be a victim of poorly conceived, non-evidence-based, vindictive legislation. When they understand that, and then you politely point out, you play golf. How would you feel if we just reduced your clubs down to a 5-iron? Because what do you need a 2-wood or a sandwich for? That's what they're doing to me. What happens when they come after you for your sport or your hobby or your business? And don't forget, firearm dealers and ancillary businesses are going to suffer. In fact, they are already suffering. I saw safe, Spiker safe ads, and they were advertised as ammunition storage. And I'm thinking, would you free ship about a dozen of them to Queensland? Because we can still use them to store guns. This is going to affect a lot of people, and in a very bad way. So it's your responsibility to look after yourselves, your fellow shooters, but also the dealer network. What happens when this goes to the fishermen? Not just the recreational fishermen, the commercial fishermen. We've been getting a hammering in Queensland. I dare say you have been here as well. Make sure your friends and family that are not interested in the shooting industry at all understand that this all affects them eventually. Overreach of government affects everybody. And last of all, talk to all your shooting friends and remind them of the 2 points that I've just made. And that is right to police ministers, right to politicians, local members, candidates. And talk to your family, friends and colleagues. Get your shooting friends to do this work. This is like Tupperware for the firearm owner. Network your network. Work your network. If every one of you, and I reckon there's probably 1,500 here, if 1,500 people got 3 other people doing this, you'd have 6,000 people writing emails once a week, once a month. That would make a huge difference. But then if they went and did it again, how many are you going to have? Now, you might get a 100% hit rate, but it won't be long before you've got 20,000 people doing it. We need to get active. We need to stop being quiet. We need to talk to our friends and family and our fellow shooters and get them motivated to do the same things.